New Jersey, with my pastor is Kristen Matthews. Like to acknowledge the pastor of this here house of worship and the leaders and those of you who put this event together, because it had not been for individuals like you, I wouldn't have anywhere to go and do what I do.
I hear that.
But the title of this piece that I'm going to attempt to get out before you is entitled Real Men. And oftentimes, like when I get ideas to write about my poems, I don't necessarily sit down and write them out like I'm a truck driver, and most of the time while I'm driving I get ideas in my head, and I just kind of run ideas through my head all day until I get like complete ideas together, and then at the end of the day I go sit down and write it down. But this particular piece, like I struggled with it a little bit because I couldn't really get the whole concept together. Like I couldn't figure out a beginning and I couldn't figure out an end, so I couldn't tell where it was going any more than I could tell where it had been. But the initial thought was that if boys really knew how to grow up and act like real men, then maybe sistren would need to look to sistren for love and affection. And that idea just kind of kept running through my head again and again. That if boys really knew how to grow up and act like real men, then maybe sisters would have no need to look towards another sister for a little bit of love and affection. I see it's no disrespect and just reflecting the images that I see. Mirror me is my fear of thee created, keeps me from being anything other than that which I was created to be. See, I before Christ believed that I could have gotten it right had I not lost my sight of the truth and the light and got distracted by what's to my left and my right eye closed, left one shut, deceived by perceived righteousness. I was a lost child, now a grown man, still trying to figure out what the function of the church is supposed to be about. Because at this junction of my life, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yes, sir.
But I didn't lose none of y'all, did y'all?
Good.
I seen some people flinch. Still good. Still good. But like I said, what the function of the church is supposed to be about, because at this junction of my life, I'm still trying to figure it out. But as a man, I understand the understatement that a woman cannot raise a boy to be a man.
Yes, sir.
Because see, that's why we got a lot of these brothers out here now that are left and right cheek backwards, pimps, players, hustlers, and gangsters, and just really good actors portraying roles stole from the plantations of this nation, facing annihilation, leaving nothing better for future generations, replacing education and upliftment with ignorance and degradation, erasing emancipation, drawn on Willie Lynch's chalkboard, advancing the ideology of the regenerating salvation. I'm faced with the possibility that my philosophy will not reach the masses. So I'm holding classes in the smallest of venues, from park benches to living rooms to church pews. I use what I got to get what I want. My religion is not a front, my God. I'm taking it back to before pimp suits and Cadillacs and purple fedoras with the rims twisted halfway back, contracting righteousness like a plague from back in the days. My ways are far from perfect, but I'm working. Still searching for that raw red letter religion spoken in the person of my Messiah, desiring to be a better man than I am standing here today. No longer focused on dollars so much, instead hoping for a little bit of change to come my way. Strange to some, but to those I say, I speak from a whole nother perspective, specifically that of those lost in that transcontinental connection with scores of Moors, Maroons, and Ashanti tribesmen were transported in that transcontinental commercial trade of live men, women, and children. Now building on this foundation of misplacement, balancing the scales of reality, trying to get back to a time before we were complacent with the abnormalities in today's society. I'm trying to be a better example for other brothers to follow, to be better men, husbands and fathers. But until then, it shall be just as it has been, with no beginning and no end, unable to tell where we're going because we can't figure out where we've been. So again, I speak on behalf of all the real men. My brothers from other mothers, but still kin to all my fast and furious rims and systems men, and my have-to-live luxurious pinky rings and blinging men, and my living in alternative sin men, and my stab you in the back while in your face they grin men, and my smiling on the outside but dying within men, and my cheat and lie to win men, but in the end take an L to sin men, set up for failure from when we begin men, and my do-rag would have fitted in Tim's men, and my clean-cut three-piece suit wearing driving the Benz men, and my lockdown in the pins men, and my back on the blocks do it all over again men, like uncles, fathers, and friends men, no matter what shade of skin, my brethren. And I know most of us were conceived in sin and deceived in that process of growing from boys to men, and now we're lost, no dogs in this world ruled by sin, so far from original creation, facing ultimate hellfire and eternal damnation men. So then, where shall I begin? Now, could it be that slaves brought here to this new land, families were torn apart and traded from hand to new hand, and a strong, sturdy black man was used to procreate on the slave plantation and create more slave hands for master to sell as a profit? So they soon began to realize that in order to survive, they had to prove to master the worthiness of their lives. So they got in where they could get in, slipped and slid in wherever they could fit, and reduced from kings down to dogs, just barely getting by. And for those that weren't chosen as studs, they saw this as an easy way to try to get above, so they were laying and slinging, humping and howling, trying to prove to master that they could swing with the big dogs too. And so from generation to generation, these studly ways were passed along as a basic means of survival, with no regard to whether it was right or wrong. And now it's been so long that we've come to believe that this is what it takes in order to be a man. Or could it be from way back in Old Testament times when men could have wives and concubines, and now somehow genetically the thought processes embedded deeply within the heart and flesh of man? But in any case, regardless from whence the roots of the mistakes were traced, now we have the knowledge and understanding to realize that our lives have been laced with lies and hatred towards one another. Willing to stab our brothers in the back just to get our lives on track, running around like we don't know how to act, like we ain't had no home training or something. Old and grown yet still trying to act like we're 17 front. And come on now. Come on. When will this nonsense stop? See, because we must not forget that we never landed on Plymouth Rock, but Plymouth Rock landed on us. But now we've chopped it up into little pieces and we're out on the block trying to sell it for a profit, screaming Allah Akbar Muhammad, but not even living according to his teachings. So now we're just false heathens, lost in the seasons, confused about the reasons of our very human being, using and abusing the freedoms that so many fought for, because now we're just free and dumb, unaware of the cost that we were bought for, because on the cross he bore the sins for all men, our forefathers past and our grandchildren's children. And it should be on this foundation in which we're building a just life of righteousness, not just a life that's right, because right in the eyes of the world is abomination in God's sight, because the word of God says in Proverbs 14:12 that there is a way that seemeth right unto man, but the end is destruction. So just right is actually just wrong, but I guess when righteousness was too long, we've shortened it to just right to fit the madness and the mayhem within our lives. But just right is only a part of righteous, and only who's a part of the word of God won't save any of us, because in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, and his name is translated as Jesus. And he came in the flesh and dealt with every type of mess, and even more that most of us couldn't have endured. This show as an example for us to live as real men, freed from the bondage of sin, going on to live eternally in heaven. And that's why I wrote this one, reaching, specifically speaking, on behalf of all the real men. LosChil.
I mean, you can clap, but first snap it up. Snap it up. That was your poetry, snap it up.
Come on, man. Yeah. Shoot. Man, that's what's up, yo. That's real tough, man.